beyond the castle walls, the night was shrouded in gloom. But inside the chambers, which had once held warmth and peace, a storm far more devastating had erupted. Stepping across the threshold of the bedroom, dimly lit by the flickering fire in the hearth, was a warrior whose appearance was like thunder out of a clear sky. He had returned home, and his homecoming brought not long-awaited joy, but a bitter, unbearable discovery. His chainmail armor, dusted with road grime and possibly stained with the blood of recent battles, seemed particularly heavy, weighing on his shoulders as he surveyed the scene before him. In his right hand, he tightly gripped the hilt of his sword, not just a weapon, but a silent testament to his honor, which had now been trampled upon. His face, weary from the long journey in combat, was contorted by a grimace of pure, frenzied anger and a pain that could not be suppressed. The fatigue of war instantly yielded to the shock of betrayal. Before him, on her knees, as if in a final plea, knelt his wife. Her posture, with hands clasped in a desperate gesture, was the embodiment of humiliation and terror. Her gown, of a deep wine red, crimson color, not only reflected her wine-like appearance, the traces of recent revelry and drunkenness, but also symbolically spoke of honor spilled and reputation tarnished. Her pale face, distorted by horror and belated remorse, was turned toward her husband, but her pleading eyes met only an unyielding, judging gaze. She was caught in the act, and even her beauty, which had once brought him joy, now only intensified the bitterness of his disappointment. In the depths of the room, near the headboard of the luxurious bed, barely managing to cover himself with an outer garment, stood the guilty party, the young lover. He was dressed in bright, but less martial clothes, shades of violet and purple, the colors of nobility, but not of a warrior, which sharply contrasted with the stern figure of the knight. His posture, half-hidden, tense, as if ready for flight or, conversely, for a final, futile resistance, betrayed his panic. His gaze, fixed on the enraged husband, was filled with fright, exposed guilt, and perhaps the realization of inevitable retribution. He was the involuntary witness to, and the cause of, the ruin of another man's family, and his presence finally confirmed the act of infidelity. The room itself, once a cozy bedroom, now served as a silent, yet eloquent, witness to the drama. On the floor, near the warrior's feet, lay utter disarray, the very traces of infidelity. An overturned glass goblet and spilled red wine symbolized lost innocence, desecration, and the recent, carefree merriment suddenly interrupted by the husband's arrival. An overturned decanter of wine lay on its side, pointing to the intemperance and licentiousness of the night. Scattered jewelry, perhaps rings or coins, along with carelessly discarded articles of clothing, spoke of the haste with which the lovers had been caught unawares. By the fireplace, where the flames cast anxious reflections on the scene, lay the husband's helmet and other traveling gear, evidence that he had just crossed the threshold. The luxurious, canopied bed, a traditional symbol of marriage and intimacy, now looked rumpled, its white sheets crumpled and careless, directly indicating recent actions. The golden, almost regal bed covering contrasted sharply with the base, destructive deed that had occurred upon it. On the wall behind the bed hung a rich tapestry depicting a scene of a hunt or a knightly tournament. This scene, the embodiment of courage, valor, and fidelity, served as a bitter commentary on the event below, contrasting the ideals of chivalry with the harsh reality of betrayal. The entire painting, executed in warm yet muted tones, browns, golds, crimsons, was permeated with a thick shadow that, in the corners of the room, heightened the sense of privacy and the secret that had been so cruelly exposed. This was not merely a moment of quarrel. It was the climactic instant when honor, duty, and love clashed with base desire and treachery. The warrior, who risked his life to protect his home and family, found his world utterly shattered. Every detail, from the sword in his hand to the overturned goblet, explained the reason for his fury and the depth of his wife's fall. The viewer, immersed in this scene, is caught in the moment preceding an inevitable tragedy or a momentous decision, making this frozen tableau emotionally comprehensive and deeply poignant. The atmosphere in the room was so thick with the unsaid that it felt as though it could be sliced by the edge of the sword the warrior still gripped in his hand. Each lick of flame in the fireplace resonated like the striking of a gong in the dead silence that had fallen. For the warrior, this moment was an eternity, a whirlpool of betrayed hopes and violated trust. He did not merely see infidelity. He witnessed the crumbling of everything he had fought for on the battlefield. He recalled the long, cold nights under the open sky when the thought of returning to this warm, sheltered home, to this very woman, was the sole force keeping him from despair. And now, this sanctuary had proven to be a trap, and his supposed salvation, his ruin. The fury blazing in his eyes was mingled with the deepest sense of betrayal. He looked at her, searching her face for any trace of the loyalty and innocence he had left behind when he went to war. But all he saw was a wine-stained flush and the imprint of shame. His outstretched hand, a gesture no less wounding than the blade, seemed petrified, frozen in indecision between mercy and righteous retribution. Accustomed to the cruel laws of war, he suddenly faced a dilemma where the laws of honor and the heart entered into an insoluble conflict. The young lover, standing by the bed, felt a clammy, cold terror run through his body. He was a representative of that effeminate, courtly world that scorned the warrior's brute strength. But now all his societal arrogance and charm had dissolved into nothing before the face of genuine, lethal rage. He was nothing more than a fleeting pleasure, a mistake that had become fatal. There was nowhere to hide. His posture spoke volumes, showing he fully realized his position as the unwelcome third party, a sacrificial figure in this medieval tragedy. His eyes frantically searched for an exit, gauging the distance to the door, to the sword, to any chance of escape, but he was trapped, like a moth caught in the lamp's glare. The wife, prostrate on the floor, was the focal point of this moment. Her plea was not aimed at denying the guilt. It was undeniable. Her purpose was to mitigate not his anger, but the pain she had inflicted. The tears streaming down her cheeks washed away the pain of disgrace, exposing a fear of losing everything: her life, her status, but most importantly, forgiveness. She clung to the last shred of hope that the bonds of matrimony and the memory of their years together, of the sacrifices she had made, might outweigh the burden of her sin that night. Her wine-colored dress, in which she had so carelessly indulged in the forbidden fruit, now seemed like a shroud. It restricted her movements, giving her the appearance of a prisoner of her own passion.